I think oftentimes what gets in the way of us being successful at whatever it is that we're doing, it's not because we don't take the big step. It's because we aren't taking enough of the small steps on a day-to-day basis.
Hey, I'm Harrison. When was the last time you had a deep, meaningful conversation with somebody? If it's been a while, don't worry, you're in the right place. This podcast is designed to open your mind to new perspectives and topics in the realms of health, personal growth, and, well, life. Welcome to the Let's Talk About Life podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Let's Talk About Life podcast. My name's Harrison King. Thanks so much for tuning in. You're making your health, your wellness, your everything, personal growth, a priority in your life, and you want to feel better? Well, you're in the right place. That's what we're here to do. And today's episode is definitely going to help you figure out where you need to be putting your time and energy into, because we're talking about purpose. That's right. And it's all about feeling better and just being healthier and things like that. And if you want to be healthier and feel better, and you feel like you've been struggling a little bit, an easy way to fix that or start to work on it is getting yourself a pair of these blue light blocking glasses that I have on. By now, you probably, if you're a regular listener of the show, know what I'm talking about. But it's these natural blocks, blue light blocking glasses that I got on here. If you can't see me, they look nice. They got a little bit of a yellow tint, but why is that? Well, they block 88 to 100% of the harmful blue light spectrum, and these are Canada's best quality blue light blocking glasses from my friends over at Naturo Academy. NaturoAcademy.com, Naturo Academy.com. If you head on over there and grab yourself a pair of these, you can use the code Harrison10 when you check out, and you're gonna get 10% off. That's right. And the reason I keep preaching these so much and telling you about them so much is because they're necessary. Like, you need these if you're on screens, even if you're inside a lot, things like that. I can't even explain to you the impact it's going to make. So make sure you do that. All right. Now, this episode is going to be a gooder. I sat down with Joey Chandler. He is a purpose coach. If you didn't know that was a thing, it is a thing. And it is a great thing. He is phenomenal. He will help you to define or clarify your purpose in 2 questions. All right? If it sounds too simple and too good to be true, well, it's not. It is true. We talked about it, and he actually has a quiz on his website, joeychandler.net. And I would actually encourage you, before you start this episode, to pause it, head on over to there, joeychandler.net, take his little quiz and figure out what your purpose is. Yes, it's that easy. We've realized after this chat today, you'll realize it's that easy. It's only going to take a couple minutes, so go try that out. And after you've done that, come on back and let's dive in this episode with Joey Chandler. Joey, thanks so much for joining me here on the show today. I'm excited about this one because I've talked about purpose in a previous episode, which is with a friend. We were just having a little chat, but you are, I don't know if we'd say an expert, but if there is a such thing, but you definitely have surrounded yourself with the question, what is purpose, and all that stuff. And I would love, before we start off, for you to just kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So I am, hold on 1 second here. Sorry about that. I am a purpose coach, and ultimately what I do is I help people figure out who they are and what they're about, and then how to be more of that in the world. And I look at purpose as, I say that we all have something at our core, something like love or joy or happiness, and that thing is part of a spirit or soul or energy, or maybe it's just the way the brain is wired. I don't know where it comes from, but we have something at our core, and that our purpose, why we are here, is to experience and to share that thing. So then our jobs, like your podcasting, the coaching that you do, the activities that you do, those are all things that are reflections and manifestations of whatever's at your core, but those things are not your purpose. And what this allows for, this approach is, and so your purpose is not the activity that you do. It's not the mission. It's not your job. It's not that. You're here to experience and share something. And basically the idea is that, most religions and most faiths have some idea that we have something at our core, that we have, there's something there. And what I've started to just look at is okay, if that thing is there, then we're here to experience it, because it wouldn't be there if we're not here to experience it. And if you can't really experience something, or your ability to experience something is limited if you can't share it. You have to, to be able to share it. And of course, you can't share something that you're not experiencing. So if I'm about freedom myself. So if I'm feeling something less than free, it's going to be hard for me to share it with other people. And if I'm around people who are experiencing something less than freedom, it's going to be hard for me to be able to experience it myself, or there'll be a cap or a limit on it. And so this idea of this we're here to experience something and share it. So it creates a back and forth, and it makes it really nice, because what happens is that people figure out that they're about love or joy or happiness. And then they can ask two main questions, which are, how can I help myself experience that today? And that helps with self-care, just making sure that you're grounded in who you are. And then how can I help other people? And that will help you with your business, your self-expression, your message, or, all sorts of different things. But you go back and forth. Sometimes you have to look at yourself. Sometimes you have to look at other people.
100%. And I'm really curious how you personally got into this, because this is something, a lot of people think about, we kind of question ourselves, whatever, but to really dive into this, has it just always been of interest to you? Was there something that happened? What did you used to do? If there was anything before this, how did you, get to?
Yeah. So I'm one of those people that did like my resume is, lots and lots of different things, but throughout my, you could say whatever my career is that I've always been involved in coaching and training people in different ways. I've coached snowboarding in Japan. I led large transformational classes and workshops here in the Bay Area. And every job that I worked at, I always included trying to train people in something. So I've always been coaching. But the thing that really got me into purpose is I did these tribute videos for people. And these are videos, if you wanted to do a video, say for your mom, we would get 30 or 40 or 50 of her very best people saying what they love and appreciate about her. And they would say, Mom is amazing and brilliant and beautiful and those sorts of things. And we put them all together, and you show them at a birthday party or an anniversary or something of the sort. And I did several hundred of those videos. And somewhere along the way, I started to see that there was always a theme in the video. The person was about love or joy or happiness. And it wasn't a super loud or overt sort of thing, but it was always there. Once I started to see it, it was always there. And then I started reading books on knowing your purpose and knowing your why and that sort of thing. And it dawned on me that theme that I was seeing, that was that person's purpose. That's who they were, how they acted and interacted with people. And then since I did videos from people from 7 to 90 all over the world, it just made me realize that we all have this thing. We have this thing that's in the background of our lives. It's there, and we just have to bring it to the foreground. And then I just started exploring, because I knew people were looking for purpose. I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I spent the first couple of years really trying to figure it out, and I developed a process that's quite quick to help identify the core and what that means. And then I started to put in ways that people can use it. And the interesting thing is as I developed this process, I fell under the allure of creating a really complex and a program that was very, had lots of bells and whistles, and it just didn't work. And then especially last year, this 2020, when COVID came around, I just realized that we really have to keep things simple, because there's just too much pressure, too much stuff, too much weight going on. And what I found is that the best thing that I can do for people is to help them identify who they are at their core, and then really hold the space for them to really be in that self-inquiry of how can I help myself experience that, and how can I help others. And I have some tricks and tips and a few structures to help with it, but mostly what I do is hold space for people to be more of themselves. Because when you're more yourself, you're just more likely to take the actions that you know to take that will work for you. And you're likely to have the grit and the determination and the resolve to get past the places where you're stuck.
Yeah, I like how you really focus on not telling people what to do, especially things like this. You can't tell somebody, but we all have it within, and it's a really neat way to think about it, that it's all inside. We all have it, and it's being brought out. Now, you've mentioned a couple different kind of, I guess, categories of purpose, I guess you would say. You said love, joy, and happiness. What are those, and how do they present, and how can we start to find what is really important to us?
Yeah. So after talking to several thousand people, the five main, what I call your purpose word, the thing that's at your core, the five main ones that I found, and this is in the English language, of course, is love, joy, happiness, excitement, and freedom. And it's pretty interesting when I walk people through the process and ask them the questions and they land on their word, and I ask them, and people can actually experience this. I have a survey that it just takes a couple of questions, and Harrison, you filled it out, correct?
Yes.
So there's just a couple of questions, and I'm assuming we'll have a link in the show notes and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we'll put it all down there for sure.
Yeah, but there's just a couple of questions, and when someone lands on their word like happiness or joy, like they light up. There's this physical, you can see their energy. They smile, and and someone may say like, be thinking about happiness, but then they land on joy and they totally light up. Or they'll be thinking about joy, but they land on happiness and it's their word and they completely light up. And so I put purpose as something that you experience and share and not what you do. And the really nice part about that is you can then, any part in your life, you can think about, okay, I'm about love or joy, and how can I bring that to the situation? And it doesn't mean like willy-nilly, dancing through the tulips sort of happiness where you're ignoring everything. It's much more about you have this deep sense of what happiness means, and how can you bring that to challenging situations.
Yeah, you focus on, or you kind of advertise as like 2 questions, right? Is the thing. Find your purpose. Well, start to find your purpose in 2 questions. Let's talk about those 2 questions and how, if that's something you want to share, and we can start to dive into that, internally, and the listeners and everybody.
Yeah. Well, do you mind if I talk about the answers you provided?
Yeah, let's do that. And I did do it. I was in the middle of something a little bit, but I was like, I want to make sure I do this. So, like you said, I'm curious to see if my answers changed now that we talk.
Okay.
When you bring out a little more, but let's do it.
Well, you said you were about happiness.
Yes.
And that happiness meant to you helping others, being successful, friends and family, growing, and in music.
Yes.
Does that feel about right?
I think so. And then now you're talking about freedom. I would also relate to that as well. So would you say that some of these like overlap a little bit?
There usually is. Well, let me ask you this. Are you more about people being happy and freedom is part of that? Or are you about people being free and happiness is part of that?
It would be happy then and freedom and being a part of that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the thing is that what happens is that we go from something in our heart and our gut. Your first answer was your heart and your gut. And then we start thinking about it. And this is what I call we adultify things. And that's why so many purposes, when you talk to people about their purposes, my purpose is here to elevate humanity or transform this or, do this. And they're very, very heady things, and they're not in your heart and your gut. And if you believe that you have a spirit, soul, energy, something of that sort, then that thing was there before, you learned about any effort, before you learned about any mission, before anything. And so it's a matter of what is that, and then how can you be more of that? And here's some really cool parts. So let me ask you this: how you're into mind, body, soul, and that sort of thing. What is something that you could do that would help you experience more happiness in your life?
There's all kinds of things. I think for me, right now, I guess it would change, depending on the situation. Right now, it would definitely be being with others, and even just conversations like this, to be honest with you, talking about things and kind of in-depth things, that stuff. I mean, I'll leave this going, whoa, like I just feel so good, so happy. Right. And that's the kind of thing. So obviously, I guess those are the things to focus on. Hey.
Yeah. So like, because you put down friends and family and now we can say that we're friends, and so that's important to you. So you could put in, and the ability to make use of our purpose and to really experience it and to share it is based in large part on the systems that we have in our life. Like happiness doesn't occur to you just because you want it to. You have to have systems and structures and activities that help you. So being a podcaster is a system for you. It's a structure for you to connect with people.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about it that way when you start to, lots of times things like this, you go, oh, it's a hobby. It's something I enjoy or whatever. But there's obviously, there's a it's coming from somewhere,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. And the other part is, let me look at your thing. So you also have growth,
Yes.
you know, and since music is a part of it, if I were coaching you, I'd say, hey, let's have more music, or let's have conversations about music as part of this. Would start to check off all these different things.
Well, that's it. That one is there because I'm actually, my main thing is I'm a musician. So that's why it's such a big part of my life, but it makes me happy, right? So I love that. Now, if there's people that are they're not able to have a one-on-one chat with you or someone like you, and they're going through and listening to or looking at those 5 things, and they kind of are resonating with more than one, what are questions they can ask themselves, or how to narrow down and really find what that one is so they light up, like you said?
Yeah. What lands in your heart and your gut? Like, you just asked, are you more about, like I asked with you, are you more about happiness and freedom as a part of that? Or are you more about freedom and happiness as a part of that? And you were instantly happiness. Like it was just very clear. And that's what I find, that people with these very core emotions, people just know. It's not complicated for people to know. It's just like, what's the one that's above and what's the one that's below, and you choose that.
I'm definitely hearing that it's not, you said, what'd you say, adultifying or whatever the word was you used. Definitely this something is it's more of a feeling. It's not a thinking kind of exercise, right?
Yeah. And the thing to know too is that we're not talking about a sense of happiness that's just very simple. The way we have used happiness and joy has been very simple, but it's and kind of like willy-nilly, but these are actually very powerful words. I mean, if you can think about it, like just imagine if our education system fostered happiness, or our political systems fostered happiness, or the insurance system fostered happiness or joy. Like you could take these as big as you want. And the real power of this approach is that you can apply it to big things, but then you can say, okay, how can I bring some happiness to my relationship with mom, dad, son, husband, whoever. And you can start to say, okay, how does happiness show up in my music, or where does it not? Now, the thing to know is again, happiness is a big, broad word, and it's going to mean different things to different people. So something that you can do, because and I think you're right to do this, is the idea you're not just about mind, body, and soul, but you're about mind, body, soul, and community. And because you can't really take care of yourself in those areas without having community, it's just, let's say, limited. And one of the ways that you can really connect with people is that you now can go out and say, hey, you know what? I'm about people being happy. And what happiness means to me is, what happiness means to me is helping others, being successful, friends and family, growth, and music. That's what happiness means to me. Out of curiosity, what does happiness mean to you? And you can talk to the person, and they'll tell you. And they may not be about happy, but they'll have a sense of what the happiness is to them. And you can start to explore, say, okay, how can we help you with your mental well-being, or your physical well-being, or your spiritual well-being that would help you experience more of that happiness.
Right. I love this way of thinking about it, because it can be a broad term. These words can be broad, but that means you can tailor it in and apply it to any situation or anything you're feeling or anything like that. One thing that I would like to touch on, which I kind of already anticipate your answer, but as we grow and we learn new things and we kind of change throughout our lives, whatever, do you believe, or have you noticed that our purpose changes, or is it staying pretty similar?
Well, let me ask you this. How long have you been about people being happy?
Yeah. And then I would say all my life. Yeah.
Because again, it's I don't do it because I'm like, I look at it just as kind of what is the evidence? If you believe this thing is part of a spirit, soul, energy, something that's somehow core to you, then that thing was there and has been there your entire life. And even if you didn't know what it was like, you would have known what the feeling was like, and it would have shown up in your life in a variety of ways. Now, purpose is not about perfection. And the fact is that we all have far more experience being who we think we should be rather than who we actually are. So now that once you start to recognize that you're about people being happy, you can look back in your life and see all these places where you've helped yourself be happy and you've helped other people be happy. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of places where you have failed at that, where you've stumbled in that. And now you can look back and say, okay, but the nice thing about this is that it provides a stepping stone. We don't have to try to recreate happiness for you. We just have to look back and say, okay, here's some places where you've been happy. What allowed for that to happen? What are the places where you weren't? What got in the way of that? And how can we use that as a foundation to step forward to grow?
Mm-hmm. And like we've said, like everybody knows, like when you actually think about it, you'll instinctively know. But if you're not regularly thinking about it, or like you're saying, applying it, or you're not seeing it show up in different aspects of your life, you're not really focusing on it so much. But once you start to do that, have you noticed that once people, obviously it's always there, but once they start to focus on it and think about it more, what are the kind of benefits that you've seen? Like what changes have happened in people's lives? Why should we be focusing on really diving into our purpose?
The science of purpose, of really knowing who you are, being authentic, is there's all sorts of, longer life, feeling better, people feel more attractive, you're more focused on what's important. But what I see that I think is just really, really interesting is people take small steps. You take the baby steps. Because I think oftentimes what gets in the way of us being successful at whatever it is that we're doing, it's not because we don't take the big step. It's because we aren't taking enough of the small steps on a day-to-day basis. And when you're feeling down about yourself, when you're feeling really disconnected, again, it's not the big steps. You go take a workshop and you go do the thing, you do the big step, but it's the day-to-day baby steps that really make a difference. And what I found is that when you're more clear on who you are, you're just more likely to go, okay, what's a step I can take? I had this conversation with a woman last week on Clubhouse, and it was just in a room. We were just talking, and she came back to the same room the following week, and she's like, oh my gosh. And she's described how she put Post-it notes all around her house and somehow it helped her get organized. And she had this whole thing. And I had no idea what she was talking about. Like I couldn't quite follow everything, but you could tell she was lit up. She was energized in a way that she hadn't been before.
Yeah, it just makes me, when we're talking about this, it makes me really think about the obstacles that come along with it, right? And I said the word failure. I don't know if that's the right word, but like when you're not following your purpose, once you know what it is, or once you like are aware of it, and you do things that aren't aligned with that, what do you suggest to kind of overcome those obstacles that we put in our way?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm going to go back. Do you mind if we use you as an example?
Yeah, for sure.
So the idea on this is any place that you're experiencing something less than happiness, it's your purpose, but for you, happiness, one of your pillars, and that's those 5 things, one of those pillars are missing. So is there a place that you'd be willing to share with me and the rest of the world where you're experiencing something less than happiness right now?
Right now, I would say in that friends and family, not necessarily family, I'm with my family at the moment, but in that category with friends and family and not being able to see friends and people really important to me. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So in terms of not being able to see your friends and family, that's the place where you're not experiencing happiness, or your friends, you said, not family, but friends. Which one of these do you think you could is either missing or you could elevate? Helping others, feeling or being successful, friends and family, growth, or music? Which one of those do you think you could elevate that would make a difference with your relationship with your friends?
Probably the helping others aspect.
Okay, say some more about that. How would that?
Well, it just makes me think because it's helping others is kind of a communication, social thing. I get a lot out of that, and when I think it's easy to fall victim to people aren't reaching out right now. It's their fault. It's my fault. Whatever. But when you go, I've based on past experience. When I go out of my way, to help others, just to do it because I like to do it. That other stuff comes, and it gets reciprocated, and I start to feel that, I guess, that sense of purpose, happiness through those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is are you reaching out and asking for the help that you need?
Not enough. And this is something I have shared before, and I think everybody's always trying to work on it and be aware of it. But that definitely is part of it, and making sure that you're good, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's the idea, is that helping others is not just about me helping you, but also me opening the space for you to help me. Because oftentimes people who are really good at helping other people are not so good at asking for or receiving the help of others. And purpose is always that, again, that this back and forth thing. So for you, one thing that would make a difference with your friends is just reaching out, say, hey, how can I help? What can I do to help you out? And what can, by the way, could you help me with this? This is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. It's such a unique way of thinking of it, and it's so simple. I mean, you got to figure it out, man. And it's so simple, but it almost is revolutionary when you think of it that way. Like it's such a simple question. You said, which area can you focus on more to make this one feel better? And I'm sure we can apply that to anything in our lives, not even just purpose, right?
Well, the idea is that you're about happiness. That's who you are. So any place where you're experiencing something less than that, that's where you're not able to be either be or express your full self, and you're not going to be as effective as you could be. And this is where the idea is not me telling you what to do. Like, I never could have come up with that answer for you. I could have said, like, oh, you want to have friends and family, schedule time, or, I could have done a whole bunch of things. But by putting it back on you and exploring that with you and just simply holding the space for you to come up with your own answer, I think you're going to come up with an answer that is more authentic and real to you and allows you to be more of an expert in yourself. And I think ultimately you're more likely to take that action than if I had told you to do that.
And the big thing I'm getting from all of this is that we just need to really believe ourselves that we have this within us, and give ourselves, if you don't have somebody else around, give yourself that space, like you said, the space to sit there and think about these things and let them come to light. I have an interesting kind of question.
Hold on one second before you go. I just want to point something out, though.
Yeah.
That there's three main things that you really need to kind of grow that sense of purpose. One is clarity and just getting a sense of what it is. And the next part is consistency. It's like you go out and practice and what I call build up your purpose muscles. Because we all have far more experience being who we think we should be rather than who we actually are. So now that you know you're about happiness, you want to go out and kind of practice it and put in some systems and structures and those sorts of things. And then the third thing is community. Because it's near impossible to really make the most of your purpose by yourself. Because there's things that I can see about you that you can't see, and vice versa. And that by being engaged in conversations, like I'm about freedom, I could share what freedom means to me. You can share what happiness means to you. And you and I could have a much deeper, authentic, and real conversation. And we'll learn, but that all comes from community. So when people are struggling, a lot of times it's because they're struggling by themselves. They don't have a community or people to hold the space just to let them kind of move into, to grow into being themselves. And our culture is not very good at this. Our, friends and family aren't very good at this. That's why we're not very good at this. So we got to give each other a little space and a little grace to not be perfect, and recognize that it's a community thing, which is why one of my missions, I have a podcast called What's Your Purpose? One of my missions is just to normalize people talking about your purpose. I want people sharing, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is where I'm doing great. And you know what? Here's where I'm struggling.
Yeah. And that's a big thing. And I try to do that on here and just in life in general. I mean, just sharing, being authentic. I talked about that in a previous episode, actually, and what that can do. And this is like the truest form of being authentic to yourself. When you could follow that. I mean, like you're saying, it's an innate thing, whether you believe in it spiritually or not, there's definitely something there. You mentioned something interesting about I don't know what you said specifically, but we can focus on things that we think like are our purpose, things that we've maybe fabricated or based on a society or whatever. We're like, this is it, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be working this job or whatever it is. And if somebody has really gone down that like kind of rabbit hole and they genuinely like truly believe that's their purpose, how do you start to go, oh, nope, it's one of these things, and open your mind to that if you're just so focused in that tunnel vision?
Again, this is where you want to define what purpose is. So I define purpose very much inside of the experience, the feeling, like our ability to experience and share, for you, happiness, for me, freedom, and all of the activities that we do are reflections and manifestations of that. So oftentimes I'll work with people, they'll come in and they'll say like, I hate my job. They'll be stuck in a job that they don't like, or, and all this kind of thing. And they're like, I'm so far from my purpose. But what this theory says is that you wouldn't have taken that job had it not fulfilled on your purpose in some way. And maybe you were completely wrong, or maybe the circumstances changed and it's really not. But at some point, you just wouldn't have taken that job. Like, given there's a bazillion different jobs, you wouldn't have taken that particular one if it didn't fulfill on you in some way. And what there's to do is when you get clear on who you are, you can look back and say, okay, here's how that job was about love or joy or happiness or whatever it was. Here's where it was, and here's where it's not. Now I can do two things. I can either look for ways for me to put happiness into the job and, to kind of work on that right now, it allows me to stay. Or I can say, you know what? I'm about people being, say, joyful. I have come as far as I can in this particular role, and now it's time for me to move on to something else. But you have that as a foundation rather than blowing it up and, like, I'm out of here, and, because I've done that, and you waste all that time and energy that you put into that particular job.
Right, for sure. I'm curious, because we've determined different purposes, what we both, resonate with. I'd like you to speak a little bit about freedom, what it is to you, and that kind of side of things, because I'm curious how that presents and how you find, and maybe even just the other ones too, like, because not all of us will feel all of them, obviously. So you want to talk about all of them kind of a little individually?
Well, for me, freedom is knowing who you are, having integrity, helping other people and letting them help you, seeing the greatness in yourself and others, and then getting paid for what you love to do. That's my definition of freedom. All the other ones I can't speak to because those are somebody else's. And what we do is, as a purpose coach, I help people experience the freedom of knowing who they are. And then I help them put in the structures and the systems so that they can, get help and help other people see the greatness in themselves and others, have integrity, take actions that are aligned with who they are as opposed to who they aren't, and then ultimately get paid for what they love to do. That's what I do. And I can look back and I've been a video producer, a photographer, a ski coach. I've been all sorts of things, and freedom shows up in all of those. Like, I was I worked at a sporting goods store here in San Francisco for a while, and I ended up managing a store. You had like 90 people working underneath me, but what I was the very best at was selling shoes. I went in and I sold shoes. And when I figured out this purpose stuff, I'm like, God, how is that about selling shoes? And what it was is when people walked into my department, I related to them as an athlete. I just asked them, like, well, what are you training for? And in San Francisco, especially in the 2000s, the vast majority of people were training for something, a triathlon, a marathon, everybody's training for something. So it wasn't a forethought to think that they were. But I treated them like an athlete. I gave them the freedom to say, I am an athlete. And I acknowledge, like, who are you? And all these different aspects of who I was showed up in that work as a person selling shoes. And I was, honestly, I was very, very good at it. As I got promoted up, I actually, as I became a manager, I actually struggled as a manager. I ended up getting fired from that job as a manager because I wasn't clear on who I was as a manager. And I was trying to be all things to all people. And I wasn't seeing the greatness in myself and in other people. And I wasn't integrated. There's all these things that were missing that had me struggle in that particular role. But what you can do is when you figure out who you are, and again, everyone go, take the survey, just a couple of questions. It just takes a few minutes. You can start to see that, and then you can just start to practice and build up yourself.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, I've said this already once in this call, but this is so interesting that you can really see you're just selling shoes, right? Like, it's not like you're out there trying to promote freedom or anything, but you can, it's like anything. I mean, you can find something within any activity or experience that you want to see. And if you can focus on what you've found within you, I mean, that's crazy. You could literally be doing anything.
Yeah. I work with people in the financial planning world, and, accountants and financial planners and insurance people, people who you think are traditionally are very boring and that sort of thing. And what I have found is that they have a huge commitment to people. And what's there is when they get in touch with I had one client who he was about joy. And so he just started talking about, like, well, what are you experiencing joy, or what would be joyful for you in your retirement? And he gets people talking about that. And then he just talks about joy, and are you experiencing joy and how you're managing your money, and just talking about joy. And then that gave him the foundation to have the relationship to where, having money conversations is not something that most people have fun with, or definitely don't have joy with, but he was able to start bringing joy, and he grew his business because he could bring that part of it to the conversations, which are, quote, boring or hard or tough.
Yeah, you can bring it out in other people, right? Like, I mean, you said it's a reciprocal thing. And when you start to think of it as not being, it is your, it's your purpose, it's your thing. But as a communal, I don't know what the word is, like experience, I guess, you can bring it out in others and they can bring it out in you. And then that's how you grow, right? You're going to start to experience new things and stuff like that. First of all, you mentioned the quiz. So can you just tell people where to go to find that, just if they want to take this little thing?
Yeah. So it will be in the show notes here. It's on my website at joeychandler.net. And currently, I'm not sure when this will come out, but currently it's in my Instagram bio. You can click on that, and you can just fill it out, and it does a really pretty good job. I'm actually very excited about the results. I'm seeing people are landing on stuff that I think is very authentic. Now, you may tweak some of the language a little bit as you go forward, as you practice it and start to own it more. But I think the results are, I'm pretty happy with the results.
Yeah, and especially if you've listened obviously this far and you're gonna go check it out, keeping those things in mind about just everything we've talked about so far. As we get towards the end here, I want you to I'm going to give you the floor and say you know a lot of stuff about this, and we've talked about a certain number of things, but anything in particular that you kind of would really like people to know or to think about, or even any interesting tidbits or things like that you've discovered or find interesting over your time doing this?
Well, I think right now what I've really been exploring is the power and the impact that this has for people who are in creative fields, artists, musicians. Actually, I've talked to you about musicians on this, actors, and even social media people who are in the process of creating. I'm really interested in, and what I'm starting to see is that when you know who you are, that just gives you the foundation to be creative. You don't have to, like, rather than thinking about like, oh, I have to figure out who I was. They didn't like that song. Now I got to figure out who I am and try to do it differently. My guess, and you can I'd be curious what you think. Like, if you're clear on who you are, is that going to give you more freedom to create something that is authentic to you? And will it help you deal with the rejection? Because creative people deal with a crud load of, and I'm trying to be polite here. You deal with a lot of rejection.
Yeah. And I think that's like, as we've been talking about this, that's something that's been going through my head, because I do a lot of stuff and I do it because I love it, right? I make a lot of music production stuff, so I'm creating songs and whatever. But if you can really, I'm not a songwriter in specific, but I have lots of friends that are, and thinking about it from that aspect, that it's so easy based on our society to go, I'm going to do this for, I'm writing a song, it's going to be for you, or it's going to be for the world, or everybody on social media so they like it, and things like that. And it's not really our fault. We've kind of been conditioned to think that way. But I can't tell you specifically, but I know 100% that will change the way I do it, and other musicians, and specifically musicians I'm talking about. But when you come from an inner, like a place within, when you're creating anything, it makes people relate to it even more, which seems backwards. If I'm making it for you, you should like it. But if I make it for me, you'll probably relate to it even more because it's authentic, right?
Yeah. And as you're saying this, I realize one of the real powerful aspects of this approach is because it's so everydayness. You bring happiness to everything you do. You can't go out the door without in some way creating happiness for yourself or others. That's just who you are. You have so much experience with happiness, and you're gonna see different ways. So now you could create music that conveys different aspects of happiness in different flavors because you have so much more attention to that. And you're gonna, I'm thinking as a songwriter, it never occurred to me, like as a songwriter, I can probably write songs about what freedom feels like in different ways just by tapping into my everyday life that I wouldn't have, if I was trying to figure out who I was.
Yeah, well, it's like looking at things through a different lens. You can do that in anything, but again, we're talking about music or just honestly anything creative. You can focus on, like I'm saying, we're going to make this for somebody, or we're going to, whatever that is. But if you think about it through the lens of this is really what I want, it's a whole different realm. That's not like I'm writing about a dinner date. That's a whole different thing. And specifically in the music world, that's if you write about that stuff, I mean, people love it. You're writing about things that experiences instead of just, things that we can see or that are like, we can touch and that kind of thing. It's more than that. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. And the big part is the rejection side. Like, it doesn't matter what anybody says to you now, you're about happiness. It doesn't matter. Someone can be like, I don't like your music. I don't like this. I don't like that. You're like, okay, that person's not for me. I'm about happiness. And he just was not, or she was not into my flavor of happiness. And then you can say, okay, was there something that I did that didn't allow for them to experience that? Like, I'm looking at one of the reasons I developed the form that you filled out is because I'm about freedom. And I want people to be able to experience freedom going through my, essentially my customer journey. I want a nice, simple way. And if I was forcing them into a call to have this conversation, like it wasn't as free as it could be. So that was one of the, kind of one of the generators of this experience. And so like you could think about like in your, and you have a beautiful website, you can start to think like, okay, as people go through this process, are they going to experience happiness? And as the back end, as you start to get more and more clients, you're like, okay, am I experiencing happiness? What, if you're overwhelmed, that's going to be something less than happiness. And then you can go and start to make adjustments.
Yeah. There's so many similarities between, we discussed lots of different topics on here, and it really all comes down to finding your own inner self value, things like that, sharing with others, and lastly, helping others, but you can only do that if you really take care of yourself. And that's all, we all need to focus on that to grow. I think this has been phenomenal. This is so great. We're going to come to the end of our time here, but I just want to thank you so much for coming on here and sharing all these. It's just such a great perspective. So I really, really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I really appreciate you listening all the way through. I hope you got a lot out of it. I mean, we talked about some big things and made them, they're pretty simple actually. Realize the way that Joey talked about it, I mean, purpose is not as big of a thing as maybe we think, and we can approach it in a different way. I hope that's what you get out of it, at least a new perspective. If you like what he had to say and you didn't take the quiz, go ahead on over to his website, which is joeychandler.net, and you can take the quiz, try to figure out what your purpose is. Just 2 questions, that's all it is. You can follow him on Instagram and Facebook, all that good stuff, Joey Chandler 70, and all the links stuff down in the show notes. So if you don't want to listen to me just say that and take notes, go check them out down in the show notes. In the meantime, everybody, have a great rest of the day. Keep loving life, and we'll chat with you later. For more information about this episode or the show itself, head on over to harrisonKingOfficial.com. There you'll be able to find the show notes, transcriptions, and videos for every episode. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Let's Talk About Life Pod. Now get out there and have a deep, meaningful conversation in your own life. We'll chat with you next time.